The ballroom of the Al Noor Hotel glowed like molten gold, crystal chandeliers trembling as if afraid of the man seated beneath them. Sheikh Karim Al-Hadi, the youngest billionaire in the Gulf, lounged at the head of the long table, his presence bending the air around him. Conversations shrank when he lifted a brow. Laughter died when he exhaled. And tonight, he was already irritated. A young waitress approached with a tray of mint tea, shoulders drawn in, eyes lowered the way staff were trained. Her uniform was pressed but old, sleeves slightly frayed. She moved quietly, too quietly to exist in a room like this. Karim's jaw tightened. His pen stopped mid-signature. He muttered in Arabic, low but sharp, assuming she understood nothing. Look at her. Even the servants here are falling apart. Can't they hire someone who looks awake? A couple of his investors choked on their appetizers. One assistant froze with a glass halfway to his lips. The hotel manager went pale, as if preparing an apology on her behalf. The waitress didn't flinch. Instead, she lifted her gaze, calm, steady, unblinking. And when she spoke, her Arabic was not merely fluent. It was academic, layered with a classical precision that hadn't been heard in the Gulf in decades. "If appearance defines worth to you, sir," she said evenly, "perhaps you should examine the cracks in your courtesy before judging the threads of my sleeves." The room stopped. Forks hovered mid-air. Someone actually gasped. The manager whispered, "Ya Allah." Color drained from Karim's face. His fingers loosened. His pen slipped and clattered onto the table. She placed the mint tea before him with perfect control, bowed slightly, respectful, but not submissive. Then she turned and walked away, every step silent, dignified, unhurried. Karim didn't breathe. Every guest watched him instead of her. And as she disappeared through the service door, he felt something unfamiliar twist in his chest. A need, sharp and sudden. He stared at her walking away, needing to know who she was. The staff exit dumped her into a narrow, fluorescent hallway that smelled of detergent and exhaustion. Only here, away from chandeliers and billionaires, did Mira Haddad allow her breath to shake. She leaned against the wall, pressing a hand to her chest. Her pulse hammered like it was trying to escape. "Idiot!" she scolded herself. "You should have stayed quiet. You can't afford attention. Not his, not anyone's." But the insult had cut too deep. She had survived borders, debt collectors, and immigration officers, yet somehow a billionaire calling her falling apart stung more than all of them. She pushed through the staff locker room, weaving between metal cabinets patched with tape. Her own locker door stuck, as it always did. Inside were the scraps of her real life: 2 battered textbooks, a broken phone charger, and a thick envelope of unpaid invoices. Her university transcripts peeked from the back. Perfect grades in linguistics, comparative law, and Middle Eastern dialectology. Her professors had written her letters calling her exceptional, rare, a once-in-a-generation linguist. None of it mattered. A visa rejection had shattered her scholarship. Her father's medical bills had swallowed every dollar. And when the bank called the debt unrecoverable, she started taking any job she could. Cleaning, serving, translating for tourists who tipped in loose coins. Her brilliance didn't feed anyone. She changed quickly into a plain gray hoodie, tying her hair back with a rubber band that was beginning to fray. She grabbed her bag, its strap mended with safety pins, and headed toward the back exit of the hotel. A co-worker, Nadia, caught her arm. "You okay? People said you..." answered him. Mira froze. It slipped. Nadia's eyes widened. "Mira, that man is dangerous. Rich people don't like being corrected." Mira swallowed hard. "I'm going home. I'll pretend it never happened." But her voice trembled, because something inside her whispered the truth. Nothing about tonight would be that simple. Mira's apartment was a single dim room above a mechanic's shop, where the walls vibrated every time someone revved an engine. She sat cross-legged on her thin mattress, textbooks scattered around her like abandoned dreams. She tried to reread a chapter on legal linguistics, normally her refuge, but her mind kept replaying the scene in the ballroom. His expression when she answered him, the pen falling, the silence, the way every guest stared at him, not her. She rubbed her forehead. "Forget it," she muttered. "Just forget it." Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her stomach dropped. Debt collectors? The hospital? She considered ignoring it, but the phone buzzed again, insistently, rhythmically, like someone who had never been told no in their life. She answered. A crisp male voice. "Is this Mira Haddad?" Her breath caught. "Who's asking?" "This is Salem Al-Hadi, executive assistant to Sheikh Kareem." She nearly dropped the phone. Her throat tightened. "No, no, no! Please, no!" The assistant continued, voice formal, rehearsed. "The Sheikh requests your presence at the Al Noor Hotel tomorrow morning at 8. You are to meet him in the private boardroom on the 32nd floor." Mira's vision blurred. I think you have the wrong." "No mistake, Miss Haddad. But I'm just a waitress." A pause. Something shifted in his tone. Curiosity, maybe disbelief. "The Sheikh insisted on meeting you. Personally." Her breath shivered. "Am I in trouble?" Another pause, longer this time. Then, carefully. "I wasn't told the purpose of the meeting." Which meant one thing. Something happened upstairs after she walked out. Something that involved her. Mira pressed her hand against her knee to steady it. "Please tell him I can't. I have a shift." "Your manager has already been notified. You've been excused from duty." She closed her eyes. "This is punishment. Or worse." "Miss Haddad," the assistant added softly, "I don't recommend refusing the Sheikh." Her heart plummeted. When the call ended, the room felt suddenly too small, too loud, too bright. She curled her fingers into the mattress, fighting a surge of panic. Tomorrow, she would be alone in a room with the man she had publicly humiliated. And there would be no walking away this time. The elevator to the 32nd floor rose like a silent judgment, each number glowing for barely a second before disappearing. Mira stood rigidly in the corner, her palms cold despite the heat in her chest. She wore the least wrinkled blouse she owned, borrowed shoes half a size too big, and the same rubber band tying back her hair. When the elevator doors slid open, she stepped into a hallway so quiet it felt padded. The carpet swallowed sound, the walls lined with gold-framed calligraphy worth more than her father's entire medical debt. At the end waited a pair of heavy double doors, and Salem, the assistant, standing like a sentry. "Miss Haddad?" His voice softened when he saw her fear. "He's calmer today." That didn't make her feel any better. He opened the door. The boardroom was enormous, its windows spilling morning light across a table carved from a single slab of white marble. Sheikh Kareem stood at the far end with his back to her, hands clasped behind him, shoulders rigid. When he finally turned, Mira froze. He looked different from the night before, tired, jaw tense, eyes shadowed. And when he opened his mouth, his voice was lower, almost restrained. "You may sit," he said. She didn't. Her legs wouldn't move. Kareem exhaled, gaze flickering away for a beat. "Fine. Stand then." His fingers drummed once against the table, stopped, then curled into a fist. "What happened last night?" He paused, searching for a word that apparently didn't come easily to men like him. "Was inappropriate. On my part." Salem's eyebrows shot up. Mira blinked. "I misjudged you," Kareem continued stiffly. And I insulted you in a language I assumed you didn't understand. That was unacceptable. An apology. A real one. From a man who probably hadn't apologized in a decade. Before she could even form a response, he gestured sharply to a thick folder on the table. "And now," he said, voice tightening, "I need your help." Mira's breath stilled. Help? He met her eyes for the first time, truly met them, his expression strained, almost unsettled. "A key negotiation of mine has begun to collapse," he said, "and I believe you're the only person who can fix it." Her pulse jumped. The billionaire she'd humiliated wasn't here to punish her. He was here because he needed her. For a long, trembling second, Mira couldn't find her voice. The idea was absurd, impossible. A waitress with a cracked phone and overdue bills sitting in front of a Gulf billionaire, being told she was the only one who could help him. It felt like a mistake, a trap, a dream. Kareem watched her, impatience flickering in the tight set of his jaw, but not the arrogance from before. Something else, something almost like unease. "Why me?" she whispered. He hesitated. "Because last night, you spoke Arabic most natives can't replicate. You used classical structures I haven't heard since my grandfather's scholars. And you corrected me with an accuracy that..." His jaw twitched. Was uncomfortable. Salim stiffened beside him as if hearing this confession was dangerous. Mira swallowed. "Still doesn't explain why you'd need me for anything." Kareem tapped the folder, then stopped mid-motion. Another micro-tell. "The negotiators I'm meeting with are using phrasing and dialect shifts I don't fully grasp. I had translators, but..." His expression hardened. "They've failed me." Failed. Or something worse. But Mira didn't push. Not yet. Instead, she straightened her shoulders. If she was stepping into this, whatever this was, she needed safety first. "I'll help," she said quietly. "Only if 3 conditions are met." Kareem blinked. No one made demands of him. A few corners of the room seemed to hold their breath. "First," Mira continued, "you will treat me with respect, always. No raised voice, no dismissing, no assumptions." His nostrils flared slightly, but he nodded. "Second, I am not staff in this room. I speak when I need to. I ask what I need to. And you don't silence me." Another nod, slower, heavier. "And third," she said, pulse trembling, "you guarantee I won't be punished if I say something you don't like." This time, he didn't nod immediately. Something moved behind his eyes. Pride, conflict, caution. Then finally he said, "Agreed." Salem exhaled in visible relief. For the first time, Mira stepped forward and pulled out the chair across from him. "If we're doing this," she said, voice steadying, "then show me everything." And just like that, she wasn't invisible anymore. The moment Mira opened the folder, the weight of Kareem's world slammed into her like a physical force. Dozens of pages, contracts, cultural reports, meeting transcripts, diplomatic summaries were spread across the marble table. Handwritten notes in 2 different scripts lined the margins. Some phrases were circled aggressively, others stabbed through with black ink. This wasn't just business. This was pressure that could break empires. Kareem watched her closely, arms crossed behind his back, as if her reaction mattered more than he wanted to admit. Salem lingered by the wall, expression tight, as though even breathing too loudly might disrupt something fragile. "These negotiations," Kareem said, voice low, "concern a partnership that determines the survival of several of my projects. Energy, infrastructure, international trade. If this deal dies, thousands of jobs vanish. Billions fall apart." Mira's breath stuttered. "And I'm supposed to fix that." "You're supposed to help me understand what I'm not seeing." His eyes flicked down. "Something is off in the way they speak." "I feel it. but I cannot pinpoint it." That at least made sense to her. Tone was everything in cross-cultural negotiations. A single misplaced formality could signal disrespect, or worse, hidden agendas. But she also remembered the rules. Her mind could analyze everything instantly, but she needed time, protection, strategy. She flipped through a transcript of a recent meeting. Her brows drew together, not because she understood it, but because she understood it too well. There were subtle mismatches in register, small shifts in dialect. But she forced herself to say nothing yet. Instead, she asked, "When do you meet them next?" "Tomorrow morning." Kareem stepped closer, unintentionally towering over her. "I need you prepared." "I will be," she said, even though part of her wasn't sure. Kareem studied her, really studied her, for the first time. Not like a servant, not like a miracle, like someone holding a key he didn't know existed. "What do you need?" he asked. Mira hesitated. Asking for anything felt dangerous, but she forced herself. A quiet room, a desk, access to all communication records, and time. "Done," he said instantly. He gestured to Salem, who hurried to arrange everything. As they escorted her out of the boardroom, Kareem's gaze followed her, not with arrogance this time, but with an intensity that pressed heat into her spine. For the first time since this began, Mira realized his empire truly depended on her now. The conference suite felt more like a war room than a meeting space. Thick glass walls, a horseshoe table polished to a mirror, and a skyline so sharp it looked like it could cut you. Mira stood beside a stack of notes she'd spent all night preparing. Reviewing phrasing patterns, cultural hierarchies, greeting protocols, everything she could arm herself with. Her borrowed blouse was ironed flat with a hair straightener. Her hands still trembled. Kareem entered the room with a presence that shifted the air. His suit was immaculate, but his expression carried an edge, an awareness of how precarious everything had become. When his eyes landed on her, the edge softened just slightly. "You're ready?" he asked. "No," she answered honestly. "But I'm prepared." A faint, almost invisible smirk ghosted across his mouth. Not mockery, recognition. Representatives from the partner delegation began filing into the room. 4 men and 1 woman, dressed in dark, tailored attire, carrying an attitude of controlled superiority. They greeted Kareem warmly, but the moment they noticed Mira standing at his side, their smiles faltered. One of them whispered to another, too softly for most ears, but Mira caught the tone, dismissive, incredulous, as if she were an accessory, not a participant. Kareem's jaw tightened. "Micro-tel, number 1 of the morning." He gestured at her deliberately. "This is Miss Mira Haddad. She will be advising me today." A small ripple of surprise spread across the table. One delegate blinked twice. Another shifted in his seat. The woman straightened, studying Mira with new interest. The meeting began. Immediately, Mira became a quiet force. When a delegate spoke with clipped formalities, she leaned subtly toward Kareem and murmured, "He's signaling impatience. Don't rush to answer." Kareem adjusted his posture, and tension eased across the table. When another used an honorific, too humble for his status, she whispered, "He's masking something. Stay neutral." Kareem followed her cue, and the man's eyes flickered, caught if only for a second. By the halfway point, the room had changed. The arrogance had thinned. The atmosphere felt uncertain, almost reverent. Delegates traded puzzled glances, as if trying to determine who this quiet young woman actually was. The woman in the visiting group finally asked, "Forgive me, Miss Haddad, what exactly is your role?" Mira looked up, steady and calm. "I listen," she said, "and I understand what others overlook." A hush fell. Even Kareem paused, pen mid-air. For the first time, the delegates realized The invisible waitress was now the sharpest mind in the room. By late afternoon, the meeting had stretched into its fourth hour. Coffee cups were replaced, documents exchanged, smiles sharpened. The delegates' tone had warmed, too much, too quickly. Mira sat slightly behind Kareem's right shoulder, appearing silent, unnoticed, exactly where she needed to be. But her mind was a storm. Something was wrong. Not wrong enough to expose. Not yet, but wrong enough that her pulse stayed tight against her throat. The first shift came from the eldest delegate, a polished man with a calm smile and eyes that hinted at calculation. Throughout the morning, he'd spoken in a clean Gulf dialect, precise, formal. But now, as he leaned forward to review a section of the proposed partnership, Mira caught it. A vowel softened where it shouldn't have. A consonant slid into a regional variant that didn't match his supposed upbringing. A sentence ended with a phrasing used mainly in rural negotiations meant to signal dominance, not cooperation. Her spine straightened a fraction. He's pretending to be less educated or more humble? No, not that. It's coded, it's intentional, a shift in hierarchy. A warning, directed at Kareem. But why? She didn't speak, couldn't, not until she had more. Kareem sensed her tension. "Something wrong?" he murmured, without moving his lips. "Not yet," she whispered. "Just listen carefully." The second signal came minutes later. Another delegate, thin, sharp-featured, always smiling too wide, slipped into Levantine, phrasing at the end of a long explanation about their mutual trust. A phrasing used historically in deals that included unspoken conditions, hidden obligations, the kind people only discover when it's too late. Mira's fingers curled around her pen. She felt heat rise at the back of her neck. Still not enough proof. Still too early. Then came the third signal, so subtle it would have evaporated to anyone else. The sole woman in the delegation responded to Kareem with a courteous phrase. But her tone carried a faint undercurrent of pity. Not respect, not rivalry. Pity. As if she already knew something Kareem did not. As if the outcome was predetermined. Mira's breath hitched. They think he's walking into something he can't see. Next to her, Kareem's jaw flexed. "Mira," he whispered again, this time with quiet urgency. "You're reading something. What is it?" She forced herself to stay calm. She couldn't accuse anyone. Not yet. Not without absolute certainty, not in a room where one wrong word could ignite diplomatic fire. Instead, she said carefully, "Some of their speech patterns don't match their earlier ones." Kareem's eyes narrowed. "Meaning?" "Meaning," she said softly. "Something is shifting beneath the conversation. And we need to be very, very careful." A soft breeze pressed against the windows, stirring the blinds. Something in the room had changed. A current. A warning. And for the first time, Kareem felt it too. Mira stepped out of the meeting room with her pulse pounding against her ribs. The door clicked shut behind her, sealing the delegates inside for a short-scheduled break. The hallway felt colder, wider, as if the air itself were bracing for impact. Kareem followed her out, tension rolling off him like heat. The moment they were alone, he spoke, low, controlled, but edged with urgency. "Tell me exactly what you heard." Mira rubbed her thumb against her palm, grounding herself. "I can't. Not yet." His brows snapped together. "Mira, if I'm wrong, I cause an international insult," she cut in. "If I'm right, then this is bigger than just inconsistent speech." Kareem froze. Bigger was not a word he liked. He stepped closer, voice dropping. "Are you telling me they're hiding something?" She didn't answer. Not because she didn't have one, but because she had too many. Language wasn't just sound. It was power, hierarchy, coded history. A shift in dialect could rewrite an entire relationship. A misplaced honorific could signal betrayal. And the three signals she detected were not coincidence, but exposing a deception required absolute certainty, evidence, strategy. If she spoke too early, she risked everything: her safety, her job, her fragile stability. These were powerful people. A wrong accusation could end her life in this city, end her visa, end any chance of her father's treatment, end everything she had scraped and bled for. Kareem watched her eyes, reading the storm behind them. "This is dangerous for you," he murmured. "Yes," she whispered. "And for me?" She swallowed. "If I'm right, then they're not negotiating. They're maneuvering." Kareem's breath stilled. His hand, resting on the polished railing, tightened just slightly. A micro-tell. "What do you need from me?" he asked. She hesitated. She'd never had this kind of leverage before. Never stood at a crossroads where her voice could save or destroy an empire. Finally, she said, "I need time. I need to listen more. And I need you to trust me without question." Kareem held her gaze, the arrogance of the first night replaced with something cleaner, sharper, respect edged with fear. "You'll have it." Mira exhaled shakily. The weight of the choice pressed into her ribs, heavy and suffocating. Speak too soon, and she could trigger a disaster. Stay silent too long, and he could lose billions. Her conscience twisted. Her life depended on invisibility. His empire depended on her voice. And now she wasn't sure which path would destroy her faster. When the meeting doors opened again and the delegates re-entered with smiles too smooth, Mira felt her heart sink. Because she could no longer ignore it. A trap was forming, and she was the only one who could see it. The second half of the negotiation felt like watching a stage play, where everyone knew their lines except the person meant to die in the final act. Kareem didn't sit this time. He stood behind his chair, hands clasped tightly, micro-tension running through every muscle, and Mira remained slightly behind him, silent, invisible, absorbing every syllable like a human radar. The delegates returned with renewed warmth. Too warm. Their smiles were brighter, their compliments excessive, their phrasing polished to the point of artificial sweetness. A classic linguistic misdirection. And Mira felt it sharpening. Halfway through a discussion about resource distribution, the eldest delegate slid a new proposal across the table. Thin, clean, deceptively elegant. "Just clarifying a minor structural point," he said. "Purely procedural." Mira felt a flicker of alarm. Procedural was a word diplomats used when they didn't want you to look closely. Kareem glanced back at her. She shook her head once, barely visible. The delegate continued. "It's simply an amendment to honor our mutual commitments. Nothing more." There it was again, mutual commitments, phrased in a dialect that implied responsibility shifting. Not shared responsibility, transferred responsibility. She felt her breath catch, still not enough to accuse, still not enough to expose, but enough to know the ground beneath them was thinning. Kareem leaned slightly toward her. "Tell me," he murmured. "Not yet," she whispered. "I need to be certain." He nodded tightly. The thin, smiling delegate chimed in next, his tone syrupy. "We admire your leadership, Sheikh Kareem. You carry many burdens. This clause simply eases some of them. A gesture of respect." Respect. But he said it with a rural inflection used traditionally as mock respect, often accompanying veiled exploitation. Mira closed her eyes briefly. Her pulse roared in her ears. She knew exactly what they were doing. She just couldn't prove it yet. Finally, during a moment of polite laughter, she stepped back, pretending to refill her pen. "Really, She was breathing, grounding, planning. If they think I'm just an assistant, they won't watch me closely. If they underestimate me, good, let them. Because if she confronted them now, she would be dismissed, silenced, crushed under diplomatic power. But if she waited, listened, collected the final linguistic threads, she could snap the trap in half right in front of them. Kareem's voice lowered, just for her. Mira, I'm trusting you to tell me when. She met his gaze, steadier than she felt. I'll tell you, she said, when they hand me the rope they plan to hang you with. And as she returned to the table, eyes sharp, heart steadying, she realized the confrontation was coming, and she would be the one leading it. The room had the stillness of a storm waiting to break. Documents lay neatly across the table, polished words hiding poisoned roots. The delegates watched Kareem with polite admiration, never glancing twice at the assistant standing a step behind him. Perfect. The eldest delegate pushed the thin, procedural amendment toward Kareem again. Just a signature here, he said warmly, and our partnership will be sealed. Mira stepped forward, quietly, calmly. Before he signs, she said, "May I ask a question?" 5 heads turned toward her, mild curiosity masking annoyance. She was supposed to be furniture, not a voice. Kareem didn't move, didn't blink. He let her speak. The eldest delegate smiled. "Of course, Miss Haddad, was it? We're happy to clarify anything." A trap-setter's smile. A man certain the prey was already caught. Mira slid the amendment closer to herself, fingers steady. In the morning, she began gently. You spoke in formal Gulf dialect. Very eloquent. But when you described this clause earlier, your pronunciation shifted to a rural Najdi variant, one used historically for obligations passed down without consent. The delegate's smile twitched. Mira continued, her tone soft but precise. "And you, sir," she added, turning to the thin, smiling man, "ended your explanation with a Levantine phrasing used only in conditional debts. Debts that bind one side far more than the other." The man's eyes flickered. She turned to the woman next. "And your expression," Mira nodded respectfully, "carried the tone of someone offering condolences, not a partnership." The woman's lips parted, shocked she'd been read so easily. Mira placed the amendment on the table. "This clause isn't procedural." Her voice cut through the room like clean steel. "It shifts total liability for project failure to Sheikh Kareem. It absolves your companies of responsibility. And the linguistic signals you used were coordinated to mask that shift, hoping he would sign quickly out of trust." Silence detonated. Kareem's breath stopped. The delegate stiffened. Salem nearly dropped his tablet. The eldest delegate recovered first. "You misunderstand." "No," Mira said, calm as ice. "I understand perfectly. You hid a predatory obligation under diplomatic phrasing, and you used coded dialect shifts to signal that your side already agreed to exploit the imbalance." The woman delegate whispered. "How could she possibly—" "Because I listen," Mira said. "And because language reveals everything." Kareem finally spoke, quiet, lethal. "You tried to trap me." The eldest delegate's veneer cracked. "Sheikh Kareem, with respect." "Enough." His voice was a blade. "We are done here." He signaled security with a flick of his hand. The delegates rose, pale with shock, escorted out one by one. When the doors slammed shut, the empire was silent. Mira stood there, heart trembling, but unbroken. She had just saved billions, with nothing but her mind. And Kareem looked at her like she had rewritten the laws of the world. The moment the delegates were gone, the room felt different, lighter in air, heavier in consequence. Like walls that had been holding their breath for hours had finally exhaled. Kareem remained standing at the head of the table, hands pressed into the marble, eyes lowered. Not in defeat, in calculation, in awe. Salem hovered near the door, still looking as though someone had yanked reality out from under him. "Sheikh Kareem," he whispered. "If she hadn't, she did," Kareem said softly, cutting him off. Mira stood perfectly still, fighting the tremor running up her spine. Now that the adrenaline was fading, her knees felt weak. Her heartbeat hammered so loudly, she wondered if everyone could hear it. What she had done could have changed the course of an entire corporate empire. Or ended her life if she'd been wrong. Kareem finally lifted his head and looked at her, fully, intensely. "You saved me," he said. No arrogance, no presumption. Just truth, heavy and grounding. Mira shook her head, voice tight. "I only translated what they were really saying." "You exposed what an entire team of experts missed," he countered. "You unraveled a coordinated deception using nothing but your ears." Salem stepped forward. "Sheikh, should I notify security to—" "Already handled," Kareem said. "Legal will freeze all pending documents. And I want background checks on every translator we've worked with for the last 6 months." Salem nodded and left quickly. The door clicked shut, leaving only the two of them in the vast quiet of the boardroom. Kareem walked closer, stopping just a few steps away from her. He didn't tower this time. He didn't wear his height like a threat. He stood level, as though meeting her for the first time as an equal. "You were right," he said. "Every instinct you had. It was right." Mira swallowed. "I didn't want to accuse them without proof. If I'd been wrong—" "You weren't wrong." The simplicity of it shook her. For a moment, neither spoke. Light from the windows cut across the table, illuminating the scattered documents Mira had used like weapons. Kareem's voice dropped. "I misjudged you the first night. I thought you were invisible. And now—" He exhaled slowly, as if trying to ground himself. "Now I owe my empire to a woman I insulted, without knowing her worth." Heat crept into Mira's throat. Not shame, but something closer to disbelief. Then the doors burst open. A security chief strode in. "Sheikh Kareem, we found something in the delegate's belongings. A flash drive. Hidden communications. It suggests coordination with a rival group." Kareem's eyes hardened. Mira's breath caught. This was bigger than a clause. Bigger than phrasing. Bigger than dialect shifts. A conspiracy. The beginning of something deeper. Kareem turned back to Mira, determination sharpening every word he spoke. "This isn't over," he said. "And I need you with me for what comes next." The flash drive lay in the center of the table. Small enough to swallow, dangerous enough to collapse empires. Kareem didn't touch it at first. He just stared, jaw tight, breath shallow, like he already knew whatever was inside would change everything. Mira stood beside him, tension humming through her bones. Her instincts screamed that the linguistic inconsistencies she detected were only the surface ripples of something much deeper. Finally, Kareem nodded to the security chief. "Open it." The chief plugged the drive into a secure tablet. Code flashed. A folder appeared. Then another. Then dozens. Encrypted messages, audio files, meeting logs. Mira felt the temperature in the room drop. The security chief opened the first audio file. A voice, polished, deliberate, spoke in a calm dialect she recognized instantly. The secret dialect of the Ashari network. A coalition of ultra-rich rivals known for sabotaging competitors through linguistic manipulation, legal traps, and political influence. "This confirms it," Mira whispered. They weren't negotiating for themselves. They were sent. Kareem's expression darkened into something lethal. "Sent by who?" The next file answered him. A clipped voice, tinted with arrogance. "Ensure Al-Hadi signs." The liability must be his. We take the assets after the collapse. Mira's breath stopped. Kareem didn't move, didn't blink. He was beyond anger. He was calculating vengeance. The security chief opened another message. This time, it displayed a document draft, a redistribution plan, a takeover strategy, dates, names, targets. Mira grabbed the tablet before she realized what she was doing. They used dialect shifts to hide instructions, she said, fingers trembling. Some of these messages are layered with meaning, double-coded. If read literally, it's harmless business chatter. But phonetically, she traced the lines, her pulse racing. Phonetically, it's a sequence, a plan. Kareem stepped closer. Can you break it? I can. Her voice didn't shake. For the first time in years, she felt her mind being used at full strength. She translated quickly, unraveling the coded layers. Phase 1. Gain Kareem's trust with flattery. Phase 2. Present a liability clause disguised as mutuality. Phase 3. Trigger project failure through controlled delays. Phase 4. Acquire his assets through prearranged legal loopholes. Kareem's jaw clenched so hard, a muscle jumped. They plan to dismantle me piece by piece, he said quietly. No, Mira corrected. They plan to dismantle your entire network, every company tied to you, every ally. The room went silent. Then Kareem turned to her, eyes sharp, voice steady. Then we dismantle them first. Mira felt a chill dance up her arms, because the man who had once mocked her was now standing on the edge of war. And she, once invisible, was becoming his most powerful weapon. Night draped itself over the city like a velvet curtain, but inside Kareem's private strategy suite, the lights burned bright. Maps, documents, and encrypted messages were spread across multiple screens. The room felt alive, charged, like the headquarters of a counter-strike. Mira sat at the central table, barefoot now, shoes abandoned after hours of pacing. Her hair had come loose, strands falling around her face as she scribbled notes faster than Kareem or Salem could process them. She was in her element. Kareem watched her with a steady intensity, not the arrogant stare from the ballroom, but the focused gaze of a man witnessing a force he still didn't fully understand. "Walk me through it again," he said. Mira tapped the decoded sequences. The Ashari network operates through linguistic misdirection. All their sabotage is hidden in tone, implication, and cultural cues. That means, she looked up, eyes blazing. Their plan depends entirely on people who don't understand them. Kareem nodded slowly. "But you do," she exhaled. "I understand them better than they want anyone to, which means we can flip their strategy." Salem leaned forward. "How?" Mira stood, moving to the large glass board on the wall. She drew 2 circles, Kareem and Ashari, then began diagramming the hidden structure of their scheme. "They think you're isolated," she said. "They think your allies will abandon you when the first project fails. So we make them believe their plan is working." Kareem's eyes sharpened. "A trap for the trappers." "Exactly." Mira circled a segment of the decoded messages. "This phrase here, 'your hospitality will be rewarded,' is a Shari code. It means they expect a breach of loyalty from inside your own teams." Kareem stiffened. "A mole?" Mira nodded. "Someone feeding them progress reports. Someone they expect to open the door for their takeover." Salem swore under his breath. Mira continued. "We let the mole think the plan is moving forward. Meanwhile," she circled the Ashari symbol again. "We prepare a complete linguistic inversion." Kareem raised a brow. "Meaning?" "We weaponize their own language patterns against them. They rely on hidden meaning? Fine. We plant new meaning into our communications, coded phrases that turn their plan inside out. Kareem's lips curved into the faintest smirk. You want to play their game? No, Mira said, stepping closer to him. I want to beat them at their own game so thoroughly they never use it again. For a moment, their eyes held, equal parts strategy and something deeper, neither dared name. Then Salem pointed to a blinking indicator on the screen. Sheikh, they just sent an update request. They're checking if Kareem signed anything today. Mira's mind ignited. Send them a response, she said, already writing. Use this exact phrase. It means all is proceeding as expected, but in their dialect, it also signals that the target is blindly compliant. Kareem took the stylus from her hand and typed the message himself. A message that told the Ashari network exactly what they wanted to hear. A message that would lure them further into the trap. As it sent, Mira felt her pulse steady. The battlefield had shifted. Now she was the one pulling the strings. The next 48 hours moved like a tightening noose. One Mira controlled, thread by thread. Her coded responses traveled through the Ashari channels exactly as she intended. Word by word, tone by tone, she fed them a narrative they believed without question. Kareem was naive. He was compliant. He was already falling into their trap. They bought it. Because they trusted their system more than their instincts. By the third day, Kareem's headquarters buzzed with hidden tension. Security teams rotated silently through hallways. Private servers glowed with encrypted maps of Ashari assets. Trusted allies gathered behind closed doors. Everyone knew something was coming. They just didn't know when. Mira did. At 6:14 p.m., Salem rushed into the strategy suite, breathless. Sheikh, they're here! Kareem looked at Mira. She nodded once. It's time. They moved to the observation balcony overlooking the lobby of the Al-Noor corporate tower. Below, 3 Ashari executives entered, confident and unhurried, men who believed they were walking in to claim the final signature that would deliver Kareem's empire into their hands. Their smiles were precise blades. Mira stepped out of the shadows behind Kareem. The moment they saw her, confusion tightened their expressions. The eldest spoke first, voice dripping with triumph. Sheikh Kareem, we're pleased to see you reconsidered our agreement. Kareem didn't answer. Mira did. In classical Gulf Arabic, she said coolly, the phrase you used in your last message meant, prepare the collapse. But in the dialect, you attempted to imitate. She stepped closer, eyes locked on theirs. It actually meant, we have already discovered your plan. The men froze. Mira continued, her tone sharp as carved stone. And every coded message you sent, the ones layered in Ashari patterns, I decoded, fully. The thin, smiling man swallowed, fear cutting through his facade. You couldn't have... She could, Kareem said. She did. Security appeared behind the Ashari trio in silent formation. Mira held up a printed dossier. Every encrypted file, every coded phrase, every betrayal laid bare. You built a trap through language, she said softly. But you forgot one rule. Her eyes narrowed. Language belongs to whoever understands it best. The executives stiffened as security closed in. You can't prove intent, one snapped desperately. Mira handed Kareem a final document, translated, annotated, undeniable. This is your intent. Kareem nodded to security. Arrest them. Notify the authorities in all cooperating states. Freeze every related account. The Ashari men were escorted out, their confidence shattered, their empire unraveling. Silence filled the lobby when they were gone. Then Kareem turned to Mira. No arrogance, no mask, only truth. You didn't just save my companies, he said quietly. You delivered justice. Mira exhaled for the first time in days, and for the first time since this began, she let herself believe she was safe. The war was over, and she had won. The city glowed beneath the penthouse windows, gold, electric, alive. Yet inside Kareem's private suite, the world felt quiet. Too quiet. Mira stood near the balcony rail, hugging her arms against a sudden wave of exhaustion. Days of decoding traps, confronting billionaires, and dismantling an international conspiracy had finally caught up to her. Her body felt fragile, her mind emptied, her feet aching. But her eyes, still sharp, watched the skyline she had once only admired from bus windows. She heard steps behind her. Kareem. His presence was different now, no longer the weight of a man who expected the world to bow, but the steadiness of someone who had nearly lost everything, and knew exactly who saved him. He stopped a respectful distance behind her. "You haven't slept," he said quietly. Mira gave a tired laugh. "Neither have you." Silence stretched between them, warm and heavy. Finally, as if gathering courage, Kareem stepped beside her. "You know," he said, voice low, "in my world, power is measured in money, connections, territory. But you," he exhaled, "you shattered $1 billion deception with nothing but your mind." She looked down. Compliments still felt dangerous, like they carried strings she couldn't afford to pull. Kareem turned fully toward her. "I owe you more than gratitude," he said. "I owe you protection, stability, a future." Mira stiffened. "I don't want charity." He shook his head. "Good, because I'm not offering charity." From his pocket, he placed a sealed folder on the balcony rail. Inside, she could already tell, was something too important to hold with trembling hands. "What is this?" she whispered. "My offer," he said. "A permanent position as head of linguistic intelligence and cultural strategy. Salary beyond anything you've ever earned. Housing, healthcare, visa security, protection for you and your family." Her breath hitched. "You want me to work for you?" "No." His voice softened. "I want you to work with me." She closed her eyes, overwhelmed. The girl who scrubbed floors to pay debts. The waitress who people looked through. The invisible mind. And now this. "I don't know if I'm qualified," she whispered. Kareem stepped closer, gentle but firm. "You are the most qualified person I have ever met." The wind shifted, brushing her hair. Her throat tightened with emotion she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. "Take your time," he said. "The offer stands whenever you're ready." But he didn't hide the truth, glowing through his words. He hoped she'd say yes. And for the first time in her life, Mira allowed herself to imagine a world where she could. 1 year later, the woman who once tiptoed through hotel corridors in a frayed uniform stepped out of a black SUV wearing a tailored navy suit, a security badge clipped to her lapel, and confidence that turned heads before she even spoke. Mira Haddad was no longer invisible. She walked through the glass atrium of Al Hadi International as executives straightened their posture, greeting her with respectful nods. Some even murmured her title, Director of Linguistic Intelligence, a role created specifically for her, now essential to the company's global operations. Her office overlooked the city's financial heart, a skyline she once feared she would never belong to. On her desk lay reports from 5 countries, contract drafts awaiting her precision, and a bouquet of jasmine left anonymously by staff she had helped secure visas and fair terms for. Because unlike the world that once crushed her, Mira had chosen to lift others. Her phone vibrated, a message from Kareem. "Meeting in 10, your insights needed. Also, don't forget to eat." She smiled, the kind of smile she didn't hide anymore. The past 12 months had transformed both of them. Kareem had rebuilt his empire stronger than before, this time with transparency and cultural intelligence woven into every project. And Mira. She had become his right hand, the mind he relied on more than any advisor, translator, or strategist before her. In boardrooms, billionaires listened when she spoke. When she deconstructed a negotiation tactic, entire teams took notes. And when she entered a room, people paused, not because she was poor or out of place, but because her presence carried weight. Still, she hadn't changed completely. Some nights she visited her old neighborhood, donating anonymously to families she knew were struggling. Other nights she stayed up reading research papers, hungry to keep growing. She had helped secure her father's treatment, paid every debt, and even begun teaching young immigrants how to navigate linguistic traps in contracts. She had become the protector she once needed. As she reached the boardroom, Kareem stood waiting by the window. He turned when she entered, not the arrogant stare from the ballroom, but the steady look of partnership and trust. "You're early," he said. "You're late," she teased. He smiled. Rare. Genuine. "Let's begin," he said. And when Mira took her seat beside him, not behind him, never behind him, it was clear to everyone in the room, the billionaire was no longer the only power in his empire. He had built it anew, with her at the center. Some stories begin with power. This one began with a mistake. A careless insult in a glittering ballroom, a waitress dismissed as invisible. A billionaire too wealthy to notice the brilliance standing right in front of him. But life has a strange way of revealing truth. Mira Haddad, once overlooked, overworked, and underestimated, rose from the quiet edges of the world to reshape the future of an empire. Not through force, not through luck, through knowledge, through discipline. Through the kind of intelligence people only recognize when it's already too late to underestimate it. And Sheikh Kareem learned a lesson many never do. Power means nothing if you cannot see the people who hold it in silence. He had humiliated her once, but she saved him anyway. Not for gratitude, not for reward, but because intelligence, real intelligence, doesn't need permission to shine. A year later, people spoke her name with respect. Teams waited for her guidance. Deals stabilized because she understood what others ignored. And the billionaire who once mocked her now built his world with her beside him, an equal in every way that mattered. Her journey became a reminder whispered across offices, passed through staff corridors, shared in quiet conversations. Be careful who you underestimate. The invisible often see everything. And as the story of Mira spread far beyond the walls of Al-Hadi International, it carried a simple message. One powerful enough to echo long after the tale ended. Sometimes the strongest person in the room is the one everyone thought was no one. If you want more stories like this one, you know what to do.